Well, it's up to us. It's up to you to get busy and spread this word. And folks like our next speaker has been screaming for a long time. He's no newcomer to this movement. And his book, I was telling you when I saw him at the airport, has become somewhat of a Bible in our house. Joyce has been referring to the unauthorized biography of George Bush, of course, George Herbert Walker Bush. Refers to that thing as a Bible. We quote from it all the time. And ladies and gentlemen, this man has been researching the global political shenanigans of our government, not just Republicans, but Democrats as well, for quite some time. Ladies and gentlemen, a veteran to the movement. It brings me great pleasure to announce for you Mr. Webster Tarpley.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, I have to warn you in advance, my presentation relies rather heavily on these slides, so the best seats are decidedly up front. I try to make them as big and as legible as I can, but if you have empty seats up here, you may want to come forward. And you'll also have to bear with me. I have a lot to cover. I have about 50 minutes. Now, I am, to some degree, a purveyor of political concepts, that's for sure. But today, I bring you an appeal to do something. This is a call to action. This is things that I recommend that you do in the coming period. Now, this is my most recent book, 9/11 Synthetic Terror. We're mercilessly flogging it here in the back. I'll sign it for you. It was 20. It's now down to 15. Please come to the back. And we've got George Bush, the unauthorized biography that was mentioned. You can also hear me on Genesis Broadcasting, Genesis World Report, Washington Wrap-Up, every Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. local time here. You can also frequently hear me on KPFK Midday News. Thanks to my friend Fernando Velázquez, I'm often a commentator from Washington on intelligence-oriented events, and I think that's at 12:30 in Los Angeles. I'm often reminded that Los Angeles is the biggest radio market in the world because of all those poor people trapped in their automobiles. It actually eclipses any other radio market on this planet, so I'm always delighted to be on the radio in Los Angeles. Now, this is the concept I want you to grasp. The massive, aggressive, polemical intervention of the 9/11 Truth movement into the presidential primary campaign to take all the elaboration that we have put together over a period of 5 years and inject it into the political debate at the highest level in order to qualitatively change the character of the political process in this country over the next year. 2007 is the year to do it. That's Obama. He's in Texas. It's a crowd of probably 10,000 people. And there's one 9/11 Truth activist. His name is Matt Dayton. It's called the Project for the New American Citizen. One brave, intelligent person to qualitatively transform the entire scene. And that's what you can do. I want to prepare you to do right now. First of all, the strategic situation. As you know, the world situation is grave and deteriorating. We are on the verge of a wider war in the Middle East, an attack on Iran over the immediate weeks and even days ahead, and then the question of the Third World War itself, the collision with Russia and or China, and I'll get to that in just a minute. The nightmare vision of the Cold War that you may have thought you left behind in the early 1990s or the late 1980s is back the day after, the mushroom cloud and everything that goes with it. And I recommend that you now transform your political thinking according to this reality. The neocon fascist madmen have brought it back. It's not relegated to the past of the Cold War. It is with us, most emphatically, right now. Compared to this, I have to say, most other issues pale into insignificance. This is where you must be active. Now, obviously, the big threat is the immediate attack on Iran. And this is expected now practically from day to day. Let's go through. The neocon theme song, according to UPI, right? Woolsey, the former head of the CIA, was asked, what's his Iran policy? And he says, it's bomb, 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 Iran, bomb, 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 Iran. So again, the neocon fascist madmen, the one-trick ponies, always the same note. War, war, war. Any conceivable human problem, their answer is war. The London Economist wants to know if the stealth bombers will soon be attacking Iran. This is from the last couple of weeks. Everything is in place. The surge is a mask for a troop buildup vis-a-vis Iran. The 4 or 5 carrier battle groups are there. The air bases in Romania, Bulgaria, Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. The Israelis are practicing their own bombing runs, flying up and down the Mediterranean from Israel to Gibraltar and back, approximately the equivalent of the Iranian run. U.S. drones are constantly flying over Iran. They're often getting shot down. And of course, the U.S. and the British are committing acts of war against Iran, and have been for years practically, with special forces on the ground in Iran. And of course, we now have the demonization of people like Ayatollah Khamenei. You can think whatever you want of these people. They have never attacked anybody. Forget what they say. Their rhetoric, of course, is deplorable. But they've never attacked anybody. That's the bedrock reality. And of course, they're not alone. We have Syria, Assad, and the president of Iran, so there's more to it than just Iran. It would be a regional war of tremendous consequences. The goal of all this is the Bernard Lewis plan. And in particular, this you can see, it calls for the carving up, the dismemberment, the balkanization of every state in the Middle East, but in particular, Iran. Notice that part of Iran will be carved away, according to the US-British plan, for the Kurds, for the Azerbaijanis, for the Turkmen, for the Baluchis, and the really interesting one is this one, Arabistan, Ahvaz, or Khuzestan as it's called. This happens to be the oil area. It's got all the oil fields in the Cargill and tanker terminal, and the US and the British are sending in terrorists right now to commit terrorism in this area with a view to detach it from Iran and make it into an Anglo-American colony. I call this the BP Liberation Front, because British Petroleum, this is, of course, the Anglo-Iranian oil company. This is the mastermind of the entire thing. This is the person who's running US and British Middle East policy. It is Bernard Lewis, agent of the British Arab Bureau. Note well, a certified British agent runs the entire policy. That was the Bernard Lewis plan you have seen. The Israelis have their own version of it, but it all comes from him. And now we have eager imitators of Bernard Lewis. Here's a guy from Pakistan who wants to tell you how to carve Pakistan into 4 or 6 parts. In other words, the program of the US and the British and the Israelis is the destruction of entire nations. That is their goal. Now, naturally, you cannot do this without eliciting tremendous resistance, rivers of blood, kinds of retaliation that we don't want to find out about. And then, of course, we go from the Middle East regional war involving Iran, Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and other states. You can just imagine, I could give you detailed scenarios how they all get involved, to a world war. This is the oil aorta of the world, right? Here's the Persian Gulf, or the Arabian Gulf if you're an Arab. Here's the Straits of Hormuz. This stuff out here is the Gulf of Oman. Still further is the Arabian Sea. About a third of the world's oil comes through here. And it's about as narrow as the island of Manhattan. And a couple of hulks sunk here will block it. Plus, you can release mines. You can use any kind of tanks, artillery you have, torpedoes, suicide boats, whatever you want, to sink all kinds of tankers and other vessels in this area. And in case of a war with Iran, it is very likely that the Iranians will simply interdict the Straits of Hormuz, cutting off 1/3 of the world's oil. And for you who are so dependent on automobiles, that means $200, $300 a barrel oil, $500 a barrel oil, $25 a gallon for your gasoline, $50 a gallon for your gasoline. The end is the opposite. But from a military point of view, we are now on the verge of the absolute critical period. And again, the question is, what are you going to do about it? And I'll try to show you what I recommend. Now, $500 a barrel oil, $25 a gallon for your gasoline, $50 a gallon for your gasoline. The end is the opposite. But from a military point of view, we are now on the verge of the absolute critical period. And again, the question is, what are you going to do about it? And I'll try to show you what I recommend. Now, the other aspect of it is, if you get the mass bombing of Iran, we have a very clear perspective for the encirclement and destruction of the U.S. forces in Iraq. Now, everybody knows this stuff by now. We have the Kurds, we have the Shiites, and we have the Sunnis, Baathists, and so forth. The Kurds are pro-U.S., more or less, for their own reasons. The Shiites are neutral, and the Sunnis are doing the fighting. You have your famous Sunni triangle. This is where most of the fighting goes on, around Baghdad and these other places, Tikrit, Hamadi, Fallujah, and the rest of them. But here's the problem. All the supplies for the U.S. forces, the 150, 170,000 that are up here, have to come through that Persian Gulf that we just saw, which will be interdicted like mad. They're unloaded in Kuwait, and they go up this supply line. It's 2 roads, each 400 miles long, 800 miles of roads to defend. Now, all you have to do is put the Mahdi army with some bazookas and rocket-propelled grenades and what have you, these green arrows, along this road, and you can begin to destroy the tanker trucks, because everything is brought in by truck. The food, the water, the medical supplies, the ammunition, and everything else. What kind of gasoline does a tank consume? It gets about 1 mile per gallon if you're lucky. So the logistical needs are enormous. This is a logistical nightmare. Now, this area had been guarded by multinational forces. There used to be Poles, they're gone. Ukrainians, gone. Italians, gone. Spanish, gone, so forth. And it adds up to a lot. The British are now left here with 7,200. The British are now leaving. The British have announced the first third of their forces will leave. Isn't that interesting? Perfide Albion strikes again. The British, as usual, get out when the need is greatest. They're followed by the Danes immediately, and others are going to leave too. Only Georgia is willing to send more at the present time. Now, the Mahdi army is bad enough, but if you attack Iran, then you're going to have the Iranian thrusts across here. In other words, this jugular vein, if you will be cut. And these forces up here will be pocketed. They'll be encircled. They will be caught in a kind of Stalingrad situation where they can simply be wiped out. In other words, the problem in Iraq is not simply civil war that's happening to somebody else, but the encirclement and destruction of your own military forces. Now, it's worth avoiding this, because this debacle, this kind of a catastrophe, would probably be a catalyst for fascism on the home front. In other words, this kind of a catastrophic military reverse could be used by these desperate demagogues to impose a full dictatorship in this country. Now, this is too long to go through, but I did a detailed comparison, of course, between Bush in 2007 and Hitler in 42, 43. And it's actually uncanny. They're bogged down in their aggression. Bush is obsessed with Baghdad. Hitler was obsessed with Stalingrad. He fires his main generals, Abizaid Casey, Halder, List, von Kleist, von Bock, and so forth, von Brauchitsch. He brings in, the supply lines are in the hands of private contractors and South Asian drivers, guys from Bangladesh, Pakistan, the Philippines, and so forth. Hitler had Romanians, Hungarians, and Italians on the flanks, people who were not motivated to fight for this dream. And of course, the main thing is the retreat into a dream world, and the refusal to face military defeat and retreat. Save your forces. Don't have them wiped out and annihilated. So Bush and Hitler both retreating into a dream world of fantasy, intuition, and lunacy. And of course, the Anglo-American model of war has not fared well. I find when I give these speeches, most people still do not know that the Israelis were massively defeated in Lebanon last summer. They were mauled. They were mauled by the Lebanese Hezbollah. This is what happens when the Anglo-Americans, with their model of warfare, their aircraft and their tanks, go up against determined guerrilla forces. That's an invincible, impregnable, invulnerable Merkava tank of the latest type, and you see what happened to it. It fared rather poorly. This is the image of what's happening to the British and the NATO forces in Afghanistan, the US in Iraq, and very soon in Iran and what has happened to the Israelis in Lebanon. So this is a very bad bet. If you start a world war under these conditions, you're sure to lose it. That's the big argument against world war that anybody can understand. Don't start it because you'll lose it. And Afghanistan is even worse. This is even more landlocked. The logistical nightmare here between Peshawar and Kabul, the so-called, the myth-drenched Khyber Pass, of course. This can also be interdicted, and we're just waiting now for the Taliban's spring offensive to start. So this is a disaster also. Look how far inland that is, and it's all the way on the other side of the world. It's a tremendous logistical nightmare. So again, the attack on Iran is the end of the world as we've known it. We have to deal, first of all, with the fact that the United States is today controlled by a clique which traces its image directly back to Hitler. Carl Schmitt, Hitler's lawyer, had a protege, Leo Strauss. Leo Strauss is the guru for the neocons. There it is in a nutshell. They are the heirs of Hitler. We had a problem at the Phoenix conference. We had Holocaust deniers coming forward. This is absolute lunacy. Bush is in the Hitler tradition, not us. They're responsible for the Holocaust. His faction did it. We had no part in this. Cheney doctrine. We're under the Cheney doctrine. It's been in place since 2004, known since 2005. The Cheney doctrine calls for a new 9/11 with weapons of mass destruction as a pretext for a nuclear attack on Iran. And this is part of the global strike program of the Pentagon. In other words, it's what Seymour Hersh wrote about a couple of days ago in the New Yorker, that Bush gives an order to nuke Iran one morning, and 24 hours later, the bombs and missiles fall on Iran. So to hit any point in the world within 24 hours, they think they have this, but of course only with nuclear weapons. Not a land invasion. They can't afford that anymore. So it's going to be breaching the nuclear taboo at this point. Now, we have this very important and authoritative warning. He's not a philanthropist. He is the person who started the Afghan war. And he boasts that he created the Afghan war of 1979 to 1989. He says, I brought down the Soviet Union with my Afghan war. So he knows how these things are done. However, he is a realist. He has contempt for the neocons. He says the neocons are obsessed with Israel. He's, of course, a petty Polish aristocrat. And he says, look, forget mucking around in the Middle East. March on Moscow and you control the world. So that's his program. He has a factional difference with the neocons. He says, forget about Iran. It's worthless. Get to the point. Get to Moscow and Beijing, and then it's all over. So he gives this testimony to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, February 1st. There he is. Quite a tough customer in his own way. And again, not a humanitarian, but arguing from his own imperialist point of view what he says now. If the U.S. continues to be bogged down in a protracted, bloody involvement in Iraq, the final destination on this downhill track is likely to be a head-on conflict with Iran and with much of the world of Islam at large. That is already a world war. A plausible scenario for a military collision with Iran involves Iraq failure to meet the benchmarks, right, these mythical guidepost goals or whatever Bush talks about, followed by accusations of Iranian responsibility for the failure. Now, this is where we are already, right, that Iran furnishes weapons, right, these anti-tank devices, IEDs, that this is somehow inadmissible. Right? Neocon mentality is it's okay, you can wage war, but nobody else can wage war. They imagine war as a one-way street, and if somebody else responds, they become indignant. I don't know. It's funny. Or, and this is the key, by some provocation in Iraq, or a terrorist act in the U.S. blamed on Iran. They become indignant. I don't know. It's funny. Or, and this is the key, by some provocation in Iraq, or a terrorist act in the U.S. blamed on Iran. think of it. This is basically everything we have tried to educate the U.S. population about. The point of studying 9/11 is, of course, because of the inherent historical interest and the entire complex of questions of justice and responsibility involved with it. But it's also, most emphatically, to stop a second one with weapons of mass destruction, right? To educate the U.S. population so they're no longer manipulable by terrorist provocations. And here's Brzezinski saying the scenario is on, there's going to be a provocation in Iraq or a terrorist act in the U.S. blamed on Iran. Now, if you get one thing out of this, if weapons of mass destruction go off anywhere in the world, don't think Iran, don't think Hezbollah, don't think bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, the cave, the laptop, and the rest of this idiotic fairy tale. Think one thing, Cheney, Cheney's office, Cheney's backers, Cheney's controllers, the Cheneyiacs are the ones who will bring you that event. And here's where it goes. We get a defensive U.S. action against Iran. We get a lonely America in a spreading and deepening quagmire that will include Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. This is already about half the world. This you don't want. This is worth fighting to avoid. It's worth being active over the next 2 or 3 weeks so that whatever happens, you can still look yourself in the mirror. And there is the point. A plausible military scenario for a military collision with Iran involves a terrorist act in the U.S. blamed on Iran. So he knows it's being prepared. Now, if I were in Congress, I'd say emergency hearings, Brzezinski subpoenaed. Who told you that? How do you know that? Where's it being prepared? What are your sources? Tell us everything. Tell. He mentions anybody. They're subpoenaed, brought in. What is it? We want it all done in one day. We have flying squads of marshals delivering subpoenas. We want to know about it. We're going to trace it all the way up. We're going to shut it down. And of course, the Democratic Party, feckless, gutless, clueless, useless, won't do it. So you have to agitate for this. This is the question. If you see Hillary Clinton, or McCain, or Giuliani, or Obama, this is the question you've got to ask. Brzezinski, the authoritative Brzezinski, your guru, for the Democrats anyway, has said this is coming. What are you doing to stop it? Where are the hearings? Where are the questions? What are you doing? Where's the agitation? Where's the indignation? This is World War III. And of course it validates what we've been saying. It's a new fake 9/11, exactly like the original fake 9/11. So we must mobilize on the Brzezinski warning. He's given you a weapon. Grab it with your hands and with your teeth if you need to, and use it. And use it to beat the terrorists, the Anglo-Ams over there. Now, even worse, Putin, the president of Russia, has delivered a war warning in Munich, Germany on February 10th. Which warns us that we are now in the pre-World War III phase of history, unless we do something about it. There's Putin arriving, right? It's called the Wehrkundegesellschaft. I knew the man who was the president. This is Telchik who runs it now. I knew a guy called Ewald von Kleist, not the von Kleist branch that we have here, but this is Ewald von Kleist. Ewald von Kleist, who founded this thing, was involved in the coup, the attempt to kill Hitler in 20th of July 1944. This is his successor. So here's where Putin comes. And here he is giving the speech. Now, this is a landmark speech of our time. You've got to read every word of this speech, and you'll see something about the world that you really can't get anywhere else. So Putin says, we're observing the unrestrained, hypertrophied, overgrown use of force in international affairs that plunges the world into an abyss of recurring conflicts. One state, the U.S., has overstepped its national borders in every way. The unipolar world, he says, the attempt is to create a unipolar world. One single center of power, one single center of force, one single center of decision-making. This is the world of one master and one sovereign. And the modern world will not stand for it. U.S. actions bring us to the abyss of one conflict after another. Political solutions are becoming impossible. If political solutions are becoming impossible, then war is the result. This is my friend General Ivashov. Here we are in Brussels, November 2005. He is one of the principal advisors of Putin and is a valued friend or acquaintance of mine. These are very intelligent people. I would say Putin is obviously the most intelligent head of state in the world at this time, by far. U.S. dominance is ruinous, not only for those inside the system, well, that's what we've been hearing about here. The U.S. empire is ruinous for us, but also for the sovereign, because it destroys him from within. It has nothing in common with democracy. Putin. The U.S. policy is nourishing an arms race with the desire of countries to get nuclear weapons. They have to defend themselves. Why wouldn't you want nuclear weapons when you've got neocon fascist madmen running around? Here's the Washington Post take. I think this is accurate. Putin blasted the U.S. for unilateralism and militarism. It has made the world a more dangerous place than during the Cold War. Now, I have to tell you, I have my own, red, orange, green, blue, I have my own warning alert system. Before this speech, mine was, it's the worst situation since the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962. But now, based on this, it's worse than the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962. And the funny thing is, if you're the president of Russia and you say the world is in a pre-World War III, it is. Once you say it, it is true, because you're the president of Russia. So here's the president of Russia who tells you. He quotes Roosevelt. When peace has been broken anywhere, the peace of all countries everywhere is in danger. That's from 1939, I think. This is an olive branch, and you've got to open your eyes to what he's saying. That the New Deal America was a welcome partner for everybody in the world, or for many at least. But the neocon fascist madmen transformation of this country has made the United States a rogue nation and a pariah outlaw state. And he is delivering that as a truth. So he's saying we need the America of the good neighbor policy, Lend-Lease, Bretton Woods, and the Marshall Plan, not the America of Bush, Wolfowitz, Cheney, and so forth. Now, of course, the neocons. Here we have Lieberman, McCain, and Gates, with the unfortunate Miss Merkel, known as Merkel the Ferkel, if you know any German. I'll tell you what that means another time. In 1938, September 1938, there was that other Munich conference. Remember the one with Hitler, Mussolini, Chamberlain, Daladier to carve Czechoslovakia? Hope you remember that one. That was the immediate prelude to World War II, 1 year later. Now, Munich 2007, in my view, is Putin's attempt to ward off World War III by delivering an unmistakable warning to everybody: we are now headed into a cataclysm. Do something about it. And that, I think, is also addressed to every person of goodwill. And the neocon fascist madmen. Right? The pearls, and here we have crystal. How about this one? Field Marshal Kagan. This is Field Marshal Kagan. He's the guy, the American Enterprise Institute, who designed the surge. He says, put all your forces into Baghdad. And of course, since he has no idea what he's doing, put your forces into Baghdad. You know what's going to happen to them there? They're going to be pocketed and encircled. It's like Hitler telling von Paulus, put all your forces into Stalingrad, so they can all be rounded up and bagged. And of course, the ultimate inspiration of all of this is Dr. Strangelove. I mean, these are... That's who they are. And now for the problem also, institutional resistance. You're not alone. There are a lot of people in the American military, the Marines and the Army above all, who do not want to go quietly into that meat grinder of Iran. They don't want to be here with our friend Slim Pickens riding the H-bomb down when the guns begin to shoot. And again, this is our problem. It's in sight. I wouldn't say it lightly. World War III in sight. I can see it. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it. It's not immediately here, but it's within sight, and that's bad enough. So, one way to do this. Now, this is a tactical decision. This is essentially based on things in the last 2 weeks. If you saw this in Phoenix, Arizona, it's a little bit different now. Cheney. A combination of things have made Cheney the vulnerable part of this thing right now. Let's go after Cheney. Let's see why. You know, Bush, he would have been a wonderful actor for a Depends commercial. A combination of things have made Cheney the vulnerable part of this thing right now. Let's go after Cheney. Let's see why. You know, Bush, he would have been a wonderful actor for a Depends commercial. Right? And I think he soiled himself on 9/11, quite frankly. He, of course, is a puppet. The modern presidency is based on the fact that the president and the vice president are puppets. They respond to the imperatives given to them by their handlers, and those generally come from Wall Street, London, think tanks, and places like this. You've got a kind of administration of hooligans at the top. This shows Bush's strange idea of presidential decorum, I would say. Or the architect open contempt for, I guess, all of us. I don't know. There's one where his daughter is sticking her tongue out at the press, but I didn't find that one. Now, more important, I would say, is our dear friend Cheney, although still a puppet. No, but right now the vulnerability is right here. Let's see why. Libby has been convicted. This is a leading neocon, right? This guy is worth 10 robes. He is a hardcore doctrinaire Straussian neocon, a disciple of Wolfowitz. He's worth 10 robes. You think anybody important in this system dabbles in elections? Elections to get Bush elected? This guy, his mission is war. He starts world wars. That's his specialty. He is a Class A Nuremberg war criminal. He has contributed at the Pentagon and now in his current form to the deaths of about 1.5 million Iraqis, right? About 500 to 750,000 during the sanctions, and now 650,000 plus during the bombing and the warfare. I said before this verdict, if he is declared innocent, hold on to your hat because we're going to get World War III. If he's convicted on everything and gets 30 years, it means that anti-war forces are relatively strong. The verdict on Libby is a barometer of the anti-war sentiment inside the establishment forces, in general. Cheney is on the ropes. Let's look at why. We have the Bagram bomb. I'll tell you what it is. He's got a deep vein thrombosis in his leg. He's got a possible clot embolism that could go to his lung or to his brain. We got Libby guilty on 4 or 5 counts. And we've got General Petraeus saying there's no military solution. And we're in an early phase. We're not in the last throes, but we're in an early phase of all this. Here is our dear friend Cheney gathering around his victims, his unwitting victims in many cases, these individuals whom it is our duty to somehow save from these policies. Now, he went to Pakistan. Why would he go to Pakistan? Well, Pakistan borders Iran, and therefore, if you want to attack Iran, you've got to set up some kind of arrangement with Pakistan, right? You're going to need bases, you're going to need flyover. You try to get them to join, they won't join. And then he went on to Afghanistan. Why Afghanistan? That also borders Iran, same story. So you want to attack Iran, you've got to visit Pakistan and Afghanistan. So Cheney is obviously on a trip last week to organize the attack on Iran. In the middle, he's at Bagram Air Force Base, Afghanistan, and the bomb goes off at the gate. And it kills a couple of GIs. This is a big deal. This is a very big deal. There are 2 possible explanations. Maybe you can think of more. One explanation that I see is the anti-war military faction had a bomb go off at the gate when Cheney was there to tell him, Cheney, stop. Stop it. We know what you're doing, and stop it. The other possibility is that the bomb was placed by the pro-war faction, and that the act actually was, in this variant, there's an actual attempt to kill Cheney. The pro-war faction could have said, he's used up anyway, let's bump him off, and we'll use that as a pretext. We'll blame that on Iran, and attack Iran saying they blew up Cheney at the Air Force Base. Remember, any catastrophe in the Middle East, any big military defeat, will be blamed on Iran. Because the argument will be, oh, those local characters, they're too primitive, they couldn't do it, it must be Iran. Right? So anything that happens. So neither one of these explanations is very good for Cheney. Then we have the necessity of blood-thinning drugs for the deep vein thrombosis in the left leg. Now, Cheney's under attack. Old George McGovern trotted out to demand his resignation. The Newark Star-Ledger, it's the biggest newspaper in New Jersey, dump Cheney now. Get rid of the second banana. And the most interesting for me, this past Thursday, a couple days ago, Jim Hoagland, this is the foreign affairs writer of the Washington Post, is Is the vice president losing his influence or perhaps his mind? Now, as soon as you say somebody's losing their mind, 25th Amendment. 25th Amendment. If you get half the cabinet to vote that he's crazy, out he goes, he'll say, I'm not crazy, then you need 2/3 of both houses. And it could be done. The other idea in the article is Cheney could indeed resign to give Bush a vice president who's politically and physically healthy, and Cheney is not. And you can see there's a couple of covers of news magazines. I saw these going through these airports. There's cover stories on Cheney. Cheney is in trouble. Try to take a push at Cheney, and maybe you could get him out in the next couple of weeks. That would then lead to the collapse of the Bush administration. Now, a couple of factors in the background. There is a split in the U.S. ruling class. You have the James Baker normal imperialists against the Schultz neocon fascists. Let's look into this for a second, because it shows how bad the situation is. Now, George Shultz emerged at the end of the 1990s as the spokesman of the ruling banking financier oligarchy that generally dominates this country of ours here. He dominates this country of ours here. He operates from Stanford University, the Hoover Institution. He is the top figure of what we would call the neocon or fascist faction. How about this? The current governor of your state was essentially chosen by Schultz and Warren Buffett. This was practically a coronation. This is how you got Schwarzenegger, because Schultz chose him. And it's also, interestingly, how you got Bush, Cheney, Condoleezza, and Wolfowitz. They're there because Schultz chose them. But of course, these cooks have cooked a rather inedible stew, so now there's a counterfaction, and that's our dear friend James Baker III. This is now the leader of an alternative faction, a more moderate faction. I guess you could say, you could think of it as the difference between the bombers and the stranglers. They have a different approach. This guy, of course, is an imperialist. But the program is essentially, he says, U.S., Britain, Israel at war with the world forever. Kill, bomb, right? He says, no, you're too weak for that. Use stooges, use patsies, use proxies. If you want to attack Somalia, get Ethiopia to do it. You do a little bombing, you get them to do it. His approach, what he says about Iran, Syria, is he says, I'll peel off Syria for you. I can do it. I did it before. I did it in the first Gulf War. He did. He got Syria to send divisions to attack Iraq. So he says basically, let's build an Arab Sunni coalition, probably Syria, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, and we'll have them fight a war against Iran, Hezbollah, and the Iraqi Shiites. So his idea is create a regional war, and you're on top of it. You're not in it. You're on top of it with a few bombers, and you can play it that way. This is much more traditional imperialism. This is basically the imperialism of the late British Empire. I could go into much detail. So here are the factions. Neocon fascists, we have Schultz, Warren Buffett, Rupert Murdoch, Fox News, Lord Conrad Black, the head of the Hollinger, unfortunately about to go on trial in Chicago, Tony Blair and Bush Cheney. Over here we have the Malthusian imperialists, James Baker, Robert Rubin, Citibank, Soros, Rohatyn, Prince Charles, Maurice Strong of the United Nations, we'll tell you about him later, Gordon Brown, Chancellor of the Exchequer of Great Britain. He's probably going to take the place of Blair now in a little while. Al Gore and the Democratic Party. That's your lineup. Those are your factions in my view. We can talk about some examples of this. But basically, the Democratic Party goes with the Baker Group, and the neocons, the Limbaughs, the fascist parrots of the afternoon, go with the Rupert Murdoch line, right? The Karl Rove talking points line. The other complicating factor is that we are now in the middle of a financial breakdown crisis. And this actually, we talked about some financial matters in Arizona. This is a great unwinding, and I can't go into detail, but you have something called the yen carry trade, that the Bank of Japan has functioned as a no-interest free money machine for the world, the liquidity pump of the world for the past 5 or 6 years, 0% interest. Well, now they're up to 0.5%. We have $500 trillion of derivatives in the world, and they're all about to blow. These, by the way, are not taxed. You put a 1% tax on those, you get $500 billion. You've solved everything, from my point of view. You got 10,000 hedge funds. They have 1.5 trillion of assets. They're all highly leveraged. It's a time bomb. You've also got the subprime mortgage crisis that is the immediate weak point of this entire thing. So, death agony of the US dollar, world monetary crisis, liquidity crisis, currency crisis, the great unwinding of all those yen carry trade. 5 minutes. I've got another half hour. I got another half hour. 5 minutes. I got another half hour. I got another half hour. 1:30, right? Look, another sidelight on this is the comeback of the British Empire. The U.S. is trapped in Iraq. The British troops are leaving. The Israelis, I think, are on the path to annihilation. London has now replaced New York as the world financial center. And as the dollar goes down, one possible beneficiary is the British pound sterling. And here's the London Economist. Hurrah for the imperialist past. We can dominate the globalized world, say the British bankers, because we had the empire. We know what to do. You never had it so good. The British. This is a very important point, but we can't go much into it. And of course, the British are delighted. Whenever Wall Street has trouble, the British always laugh, Schadenfreude. So here's the walk on Wall Street, and it's walking the tightrope, your toes, and you're going to go down, says the London Economist. The immediate perspective, I think, could well be this. Get rid of Cheney. He's weak. Try to kick him now when he's down. Right? Don't let that thrombosis go away before we get rid of him. Now, the problem, however, is stop him before he kills again. The September Criminals Network, in other words, the invisible government will not go away. Right? Bush and Cheney may go, but the invisible government not. Let's look at the state of our movement. Now, I say our, because I regard everybody here as part of 9/11 Truth. I hope you agree. Yes. Let's look at our history. About a year ago, just about a year ago, we had the Charlie Sheen statements about how he didn't believe the official version. And this simply knocked the media world on its ear. This was done with the help of Alex Jones, tremendous activist in the movement. And above all, I want to point you to the debate, the Los Angeles conference. Many people here, I believe, were at the Los Angeles conference of last June, and I want to tell you, you made history. If you have some doubts about whether you can change history again, I say to you, you have already changed history in the form of this conference. Here's Alex Jones, for those who weren't there. This was on C-SPAN 4 times, possibly 5 times, for a total of 10 hours of C-SPAN, and it got the biggest audience in C-SPAN history, according to leaks from the C-SPAN bureaucracy. And it changed the climate of opinion in the United States. Bush and Rove thought they could win again, as they had won in 2002, 2004. They thought they could do it in 2006, using the boogeyman of 9/11. And a lot of Pols noticed, hey, wait a minute, as far as 9/11 is concerned, the life has gone out of the booze. It's not working anymore. People are not frightened enough to roll over on this terrorism issue. And this is how it happened. Here we are. Alex Jones, Bob Bowman, Dr. Stephen Jones, Jim Fetzer over here. Here I am. And this was on 4 to 5 times. We also had Stephen Jones starting in November of 2005, preparing the ground here on MSNBC. And of course it goes on and on. When you get your subscription copy of Hustler in the mail, before you go on to read about the 62 Republican perverts, do read this part over here. Well, the picture sections, Charlie Sheen, Alex Jones, and I think we have Stephen Jones in here too. So this is a mass market publication, I guess. Everybody got 30 seconds on CNN here, even I benefited. And Bob Bowman got 44% in his district in Florida. And if our dear friend Rahm Emanuel, I call him Rambozo, let's call him Rambozo, Rahm Emanuel, the current head of the Democratic caucus in the House, if he'd given him a couple of $100,000, he would have won the seat, and we'd have an actual 9/11 Truth Caucus in the House of Representatives. Now, do not believe that these parliamentary cretins, Pelosi and Reid, that they electrified public opinion with their courageous stances and so forth, right? This is obviously absurd. They did their best to lose the election. Since the election, they've done their best to throw away the fruits of the election. They were allowed to get where they are today by our action, and I'll try to show you how. Here's the poll. This was last October. New York Times, CBS. 16% of Americans think the government is telling the truth. Do you think they're telling the truth, hiding something, or mostly lying? Telling the truth, 16. Hiding something, 53. Mostly lying, 28. And then not sure. This is in the wake of the 4 to 5 C-SPAN broadcasts. We changed public opinion. You changed public opinion and determined the outcome of this election by breaking the power of the 9/11 terror demagogy and the boogeyman vision of bin Laden and the rest of them. Rove thought he could win. Many people saw that it was not effective. And the turning point, I would say, is the Charlie Sheen, Alex Jones, Los Angeles conference and the 4 C-SPAN broadcasts. So the 9/11 nightmare vision was discredited. I'm on until 1:30. I started at 20 to noon. 20 to noon. I get 50 minutes. Well, I came 2,000 miles. Now, one of our problems is this constant question of anti-Semitism. And interesting question. I just want to mention this briefly. A couple of weeks ago, I started getting calls from a producer at CNN, and she says to me, "Oh, what do you think of 9/11?" And I tell her what I think. She said, "Well, what about the Jews and the Mossad? What do you think about them?" I said, "Well, I think this is much overestimated. Here's what I think about it." And then that was it. And I think some other people here have gotten calls from the same C-SPAN producer. This is for Paula Zahn. So what they wanted was somebody to go on Paula Zahn and talk about the Jews and the Mossad. And I'm afraid they found it in our friend Chris Bolin, who is willing to do it. Learn something from this example. They're actively going out and trying to get people who are willing to say, it was not the CIA, not the Pentagon, not the NSA, not the New York banks, not any of them, but a couple of 2-bit Mossad agents dancing on a roof. And this is absolutely absurd. Notice the propaganda techniques that they use. Now, this is the problem. Bruegel's triumph of death. This is now the thing we have to worry about. Who can stop World War III? You. Time magazine has empowered all of us. We are the media. We can make news and be the media. Now, what is our movement? Light forces. Not that many. No money. Not much of an organization. But we have the greatest political issue of the time. No other issue compares to 9/11. Nothing comes close. You, as 9/11 truth activists, have self-selected yourself. You are moral and intellectual giants compared to the people around you. Your moral and intellectual qualities are greater than those of the average population by factors of 10, orders of magnitude. You are the salt of the earth. You have the possibility to intervene to change the course of events. And since you can, you must. Because there are millions of people out in the world who would like to, but can't. So how can these forces steer us away from the catastrophe of World War III? How can we be a catalyst also to that party realignment going on here? 28, 60, 96, 32, 68, and now we've got another one. The 30 to 40 year cycles. If you don't get it, ask me later. 9/11 Truth Squads. This is the heart of the matter. You've got the New Hampshire primary, the Iowa caucuses, the Nevada caucuses, the South Carolina primary. The Nevada caucuses. Note well. This is in time of retail politics. You don't have it last year, you don't have it next year. You have it now. Town meetings, barbershops, workplaces, old folks' homes, public streets, and so forth. The process is uncontrollable. There are 25 candidates, and they're out there. The 9/11 Truth Squads were founded in Dover, New Hampshire, January 20th. Here are 2 guys. Rob is got a small computer company. Mike is a broadcaster in the Connecticut River Valley over in Keene, New Hampshire. And they went and confronted Dodd The details are not important, but they went right out to Dodd, who was campaigning across town, about 5 or 10 minutes away, and they began to ask him about 9/11. I'd be glad to take a look at this. I don't know the answer. He wants to be president and defeat the Bushies, but he doesn't know. There he is. And it was printed in the Democratic New Hampshire newspaper. And there's more. Another guy gets up. 2 questioners. 1 question, 1 follow-up, 1 cameraman. Unfortunately, we didn't have the cameraman. So he says, would you support an investigation? I'd take a look at it. By now he's beginning to get worried. Now, of course, we do interventions. Here's DC 9/11 Truth. Beware another fake 9/11 to nuke Iran at the White House. Right? 9/11 Truth now. But again, the Obama. Matt Dayton. We can disrupt the media food chain, break the controlled environment, disrupt the mass brainwashing. And look at that. A sea of brainwashed zombies and 1 9/11 activist completely changes the entire thing. It could be you. It should be you. I had him on my radio program. I said, did you get any punch you in the ribs or anything? No. And of course, you have to remember, the cameraman or the camera woman who did this is also a key part of it. So we want to create a media feeding frenzy. We want to force the controlled media to work for us. You can do it. There it is again. How do you do it? You ask loaded questions. It's what Plato and Socrates would have wanted you to do. Ask loaded questions. You can also do things like this. This is January 27th peace demonstration, right? The raging grannies in the background. 9/11 is an inside job. How about that one? The Philadelphia 9/11 Truth. Some kids from Temple University took the lead in confronting Jesse Jackson about the fact that he's a member of the CFR and he's covering up on 9/11. That was January 27th, 2007. You can see it on Google. What should you ask? The Brzezinski warning. We've gone through it. The nuclear sneak attack on Iran. The need to junk the Kane-Hamilton report. Lots of reasons. Just we've heard last night. They didn't take Rodriguez's testimony into account. Junked the whole thing. Reopen 9/11 or whatever you like best. Now it's been done. This is a guy called Siddharth. And this is called the macaca moment. And I'm amazed how many people didn't follow this. This is a guy, he's working for Webb. He shows up at a campaign event of Senator George Allen of Virginia, who at that point was headed for re-election and possibly the presidency. He would have been Bush redivivus, right? Another Bush. So there he is, Siddharth. And he creates a macaca moment. Now, he did this just by showing up. He just shows up and starts filming. And Alan starts saying, macaca, 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 macaca. Alan literally destroyed himself in that moment. And because the guy was filming it, up it went on Google and YouTube and the rest. The macaca moment, yeah, there it is. The macaca moment determined the fate of the U.S. Senate because the last race to be decided was the Webb-Allen, and Allen went down because of macaca. You can change. Macaca is a racial slur. Macaca is a violent racial slur in the French of Tunisia, which is where Alan's mother comes from. Okay? So it's like he's doing tremendous ethnic insult. What does it take? 2 questioners, 1 cameraman. You confront the candidates on the issues, you tape the result, and you put it up. 9/11 blogger will be happy to take it. YouTube, DC 9/11 Truth. We have one called 911truthsquads.com. 911truthsquads.com. So it all comes down to you. You make the news, you are the news, and you are the media. We've confronted Dodd, Richardson, Jesse Jackson. We need to hit, obviously, Hillary. Hitlery. I have 15 minutes more.
Lunch is getting cooked. The hotel's going to take a while.
I'm so sorry.
We do after lunch.
All right, fine.
Okay.
All right, let me try to make a point. Prioritize. Fine. Now we're promised that we can break for lunch and then I can resume for a while. All right, fine. I suppose it's reasonable. I don't know. You want to get Hitlery. You want to get Obama. McCain is always on the verge of a nervous breakdown if you question him. And then, of course, we have Giuliani, as he's known. Giuliani is now the Republican frontrunner. So aim for these. Any of them are fine targets. I would say that Kucinich, Ron Paul, and Gravel deserve a little bit more gentle treatment and sort of prodding or encouraging or something like this, because I think all three of them are close to moving into something more active. The possibilities, therefore, to make it a fad on campuses. It could be the in thing to do on campus. It could be a mania in society. You've got to remember that we have a population that is filled with hatred and resentment against the bankrupt ruling class. And it's only looking for a lightning rod to express this resentment, this hatred. And therefore, in the context of the party realignment. Remember, Lyndon B. Johnson was at a point where he could not go and give a speech without being heckled and people intervening. He had to go to military bases. And of course, the peace movement, just by asking Hillary Clinton a bunch of questions, they simply asked her, why don't you repudiate your vote on Iraq? And she wouldn't do it. A flurry of op-eds in the Washington Post, and then she has to change her demagogy and say, I want to be out in 90 days, 90 days. So it does have an effect. Now maybe we can resume after.
Yes.
We can certainly resume if that's the commitment. I mean, after 2009. We'll resume right here with the question of my house.
Let's give a hand for us. He's not finished, but your food is getting cold. You guys paid for the food. The hotel literally told me 3 minutes ago, you have 10 minutes, I'm going to take the food off for the health reasons. That's the only reason. It's not disrespect to Webster. It's his own lunch, too. You better go get it, Webster. Okay, go right now. We're going to make a short lunch. We have to. Go come back an hour. An hour from now, we're going to be back in our seats because if you want... An hour from now, it's at 2:15. Be back in your seats. Short lunch.
And I recommend to you, if you have resources, if you have time, money, energy, run for office. Dollars. Spend it on leaflets or buy a spot on the radio in your local community. If you spend that $100 on having some lawyer write a brief, a fascist judge will throw the brief in the wastebasket and you've wasted your money. But actual agitation in the real world is irrevocable and will have an effect. Now, we have a choice between the reality of MyHop and the demagogy of the war on terror. And what I would like to recommend, to make this very quick, if you take the official version, the unanswered questions, the blowback thesis, the so-called you deserve it or you got it because you're imperialists, and LIHOP, the let it happen on purpose, the notion that there really is a terror group and the Bush regime let it happen, allowed them to attack. All of this comes down to the same conception of the world, the same underlying strategic map. All assume that there really is an Arab and Islamic terror organization, and they really do want to strike, and they really want to kill you, and they can kill you if you let them do it. This is exactly false. This is exactly what I deny. And I have to differ with my colleague William Blum yesterday, who represented, I think in a very clear way, the blowback thesis. In other words, the imperialism of the U.S. generates a response from the third world in the form of terrorism. And again, I fundamentally deny that this is the case. There is no such terror organization that exists independently and has an independent ontological status. Al-Qaeda is founded by the CIA. Bin Laden is a dupe and a patsy of the CIA, and so on down the line. Zawahiri, the same thing. So I have to differ very strongly with Mr. Bloom, who it seems to me would do better to delve more energetically into the proof that we've been putting forward here of the inside job and the massive role of the U.S. government in making this happen. So the MyHop point of view says we do not accept the world as defined by Richard Clarke, George Tenet, George Bush, the FBI, and so forth. We have a different conception of world political reality. We know that terrorism is a weapon of the U.S. British finance oligarchy for the purpose of waging war on the people. There is no independent Al-Qaeda. It's important because this is also the question, where is the next attack coming from? If you believe in official version, unanswered questions, blowback or LIHOP, you'll say, sure, Watch Iran, watch Hezbollah, watch Al-Qaeda, watch Bin Laden, watch the laptop, watch the cave, and all the rest of this dreary catalog of nonsense. The MIHOP position says, don't watch any of them. Watch Cheney's hands and feet. Watch Cheney's backers, Cheney's controllers. Again, the Cheney acts. Is the global war on terror real? The GWAT, you'll have to pardon me, the GWAT, the global war on terror. And they all say, the Democratic Party, of course, says, well, we all agree that we have to fight terrorism. The hell we do. We don't believe that. We believe that it's time to take the crisis home to the finance oligarchs who created this and their minions in the CIA and the Pentagon who brought all this about. So the GWAT is a fraud by U.S. and British imperialists who were also big terrorist controllers. PKK, Kurdish terrorists, MEK, Iranian terrorists, Akhvaz, Baluchis, Chechens, all working for CIA and MI6, British. Who's the founder of Al-Qaeda? It's the current Secretary of Defense of the United States, Robert Gates. He writes in his memoirs, buy my book, he writes in his memoirs, we thought of creating an international brigade, we thought of creating an Arab legion to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan, and then we decided not to do it. Well, they decided to do it, and he's the founder, and he now sits at the top of the Pentagon. That's your global war on terror. We also have the new czar of intelligence, right? The replacement for Negroponte. His name is McConnell. And he has been for 10 years one of the bosses of Booz Allen Hamilton. And if I had a question to ask, if I could issue subpoenas, which I can't, and I won't be able to, but if I could, I would ask, Mr. McConnell, what were you doing on September 11th in your offices in Booz Allen Hamilton? Was anything extraordinary going on there? I really can't say much more, but you get the idea. What is the involvement of Booz Allen Hamilton in certain events taking place about 5 years ago, Admiral? Now, 9/11 is the key to the political situation and remains so, perhaps even more so than ever. In Bush's escalation speech, the surge speech on January 10th, what's the premise? 9/11, the lessons of 9/11. Next day, Limbaugh and all the rest of them with the Karl Rove talking points. 9/11, 3,000 victims, on and on. Cheney gives an interview. If you don't support our Iraq strategy, you're playing into the hands of Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. Lieberman, the warmonger Democrat wing, neocon, meet the press. 9/11 not once, but twice. The Bush State of the Union. The Bush State of the Union had about 1/3 of the speech. You should listen to these speeches and read them. About 1/3 of the speech is a kind of waking monologue, a kind of dream time about the lessons of that September morning and how that will stay with us forever and how our world changed. Well, no, we don't accept it. And in the recent House debate, Congressman Shadegg, Arizona, and Congressman Hoekstra, known as Hoekster, sent a letter to the House Republicans. How do you argue? And they said, look, forget about Iraq, forget about the surge. Talk about Bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, terrorism. That's what gets some votes.